when you look at these records, these old Major League Baseball records that have been standing for some of them for almost 100 years. I mean, you look at a guy like Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth had records beyond home runs. I mean,
right.
Babe Ruth was not just an incredible hitter; he was an amazing pitcher. And when Madison Bumgarner turned in that amazing postseason performance and that amazing World Series performance with his really low ERA, remember, one of the three guys on that list was Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth posted a .23 ERA in a World Series.
And you're talking about the series against Kansas City where he came out of the pen in Game 7 and pitched, what was it, 4.5 to go ahead and get the I think he got the save in that game, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and you bring up records, and it's funny because, you know, I mean, we've gone through, and there are an immense amount of records that you can. I mean, they have records for the most guys have been hit by a pitch, the most, you know, the guy that's thrown the most balks. You know, I've looked at records I think that can be broken and can't be broken.
Mm-hmm.
I came into this telling you that I thought that Jolton Joe's record could eventually be broken, but here's my issue with it. Hitters are now becoming, and I'm thinking I was wrong, hitters are becoming more resigned to the fact that, you know what, if I'm a pull hitter, I'm a pull hitter. You're not seeing a lot of adjustments. I don't know if they're not willing to listen, but for a guy that's hitting in the big leagues, you would think he could make an adjustment to straighten the ball out a little bit, keep the hips, and find a way to at least try and use more of the field. You're seeing the shift. You're using the player's, general instincts, what you're expecting from him, you're using it against him. Plus, to a point, I've seen the game become a little bit more selfish, and I'm going to throw Bryce Harper out there with the way that he acts, and I may get flack for it, but it drives me nuts. And if you want to give us flack for it, hit us up at Twitter at OOLeftField. We are on Twitter. We're going to get some stuff up there. But, guys, feel free to tweet us. Chris and I both will respond. That's at OOLeftField. But I'm seeing a more selfish game, guys pitching around the big hitters, not willing to face them. I get that, you don't want to get, smacked by Harper, or you don't want to get smacked by Barry Bonds. But
no, I agree. But I agree with that.
Let's say guys bunting on a perfect game in the seventh inning. After the sixth, just take it. It's history. I get you don't want to be the footnote, but it's history. You don't want to see a guy, bunting in that situation. I think if a guy even got close, if we saw a guy hit 50 games, I don't think he would get a pitch to hit in a game. And they would end the record just because they didn't want to be the team to give up hit number 50 or didn't give him, the one to tie or break that record. I think you'd see him pitch around it to where, either drop a bunt and try and beat it out, or it's just not going to happen. And that bugs me. I want to see records happen like that, and I don't think it will.
Well, and I want to see them happen the right way. When I was younger, everybody was in love with baseball for the simple fact that Mark McGuire and Ken Griffey Jr. and what's the guy in the Cubs name? Sammy Sosa. They were rushing towards that home run record, that single-season home run record. And then they not only broke it, but they crushed it. I mean, they destroyed it. And to be honest with you, I wasn't really happy.
Right.
Yeah. I wasn't really happy with the way that it was broken, especially later when all the allegations came out, and then we all found out that those were founded allegations. And now we have guys that are in record books that, in my opinion, really need asterisks next to their name because they played in an era of baseball when people were cheating and that was the norm.
My issue with the asterisk, and I've had this argument with my dad, is, I'm at a point now where I'm almost okay with letting guys that have used PEDs, even though I hate the idea of them being in the Hall of Fame. And again, if you want to get on me, that's at OOLeftField on Twitter, guys. It became an era that, let's be honest, Bud Selig allowed to happen because baseball was dying because of the strike. So what did I always say? Chicks dig the long ball. So let's get guys, let's let them do what they want. We're not, we'll let it be. And then when it came to the end of his tenure, I'm going to clean up my game. Well, you can't have it both ways, bud. So, it's funny because I say don't let Pete Rose in because he bet on baseball, even, and that's kind of the cardinal sin that's unforgivable. But steroids became something that was accepted in that time frame. So if you put them in, you build another wing, whatever you want to do. If anything, put a note on their plaque. Hey, this player was, was proven to have taken performance-enhancing drugs, or between the 1990, from 90 to 2000 or to 2000, whatever. This, consider it the steroid era. There were multiple players, that were accused, and some were found to have taken performance-enhancing drugs. And let fans take from it what they will.
Sure, I agree with that.
I mean, that's where I think.
But what I have a problem with is when a guy like Hank Aaron loses the home run record to Barry Bonds. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Giants fan. I have been my entire life. And when it was happening, I was excited. But in the later seasons of Bonds' career, we all knew he was doing performance-enhancing drugs. How could you not? The guy used to weigh 160 pounds, and when he played for the Pirates, he was a skinny little knock-kneed kid. By the time he finished playing for the Giants, he was a huge bodybuilder-looking dude with a water head. Obviously, he was taking some anabolics.
He went from being a 40-40 guy to a 73 and nothing guy. I mean, he could barely move. They stick him in left field because that's usually where your least productive outfielder goes. He couldn't run. He could barely move, but my God, he could crush a baseball. So we've got to have him in the game. And he's not going to go to the American League and be a DH, so where are we going to put him?
Left field in San Francisco.
And it worked. And for those of you guys
that are wanting
to get at us, one second, Chris. For those of you guys wanting to get at us who aren't on Twitter, I know that's not everyone's thing. Not everyone's getting into the social media side of it. If you want to get us on Twitter, that's at OOLeftField. If you want to hit us up on email us, you can email us at ooleftfield@gmail.com. Again, it's ooleftfield@gmail.com. Before we go to I want to thank Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth for getting us on here. We're really excited to be doing this out of left field, and really hoping that you guys appreciate it. So please hit us up on, again, Twitter at ooleftfield or on email at ooleftfield@gmail.com. Chris, go ahead. I'm sorry, bud.
No, that's fine. So the problem that I have is when a guy like Hank Aaron, who played the game hard, and he played the game how it was supposed to be played, and he didn't use performance-enhancing drugs, and he did it in a time when it was not only was it unexpected for him to do it, but he caught a lot of flack for breaking Babe Ruth's record as an African-American player in the 1970s. And I hate to see a guy like that lose the number one spot to a guy who did drugs to get it. I hate it. So I agree. Put him in the Hall of Fame if you want to put him in the Hall of Fame. Just leave him out of the record books.
I get that, but the issue is at that point then, and I know we're going to move on from this, but I'm going to throw out a couple of things real quick. The best ERA in the major leagues was Ed Walsh, who began a career in 1904, ended in 1917, and had a 1.82. He's one of only two pitchers with a career ERA under 2. But both of these pitchers are ending their careers for the live ball era. The live ball era changed everything. James Wilhelm is the first pitcher to actually pitch in the live ball era. His career ERA was 2.52. But if you want to pull guys out of the record books, right now, strikeout, no one's going to break Nolan Ryan's record, period. The number 2 and number 3 are Randy Johnson and Roger Clemens, and they couldn't even break 5,000.
If you're going to invoke the dead ball era, then realistically Babe Ruth gets to stay in the number one spot. I mean, you can't equate an era where baseballs didn't fly the way they fly now to an era where guys are taking performance-enhancing drugs in order to break records that they would otherwise never had an opportunity to break.
But you could also say
Barry Bonds would have never been able to hit the ball the way Barry Bonds hit the ball unless he was on steroids. Mark McGwire is the same thing. Jose Canseco, same thing.
But to that point, then you can also say that back in when the live ball era began, pitching wasn't what it is now. I mean, yeah, guys threw hard, but you weren't seeing the movement and the precision that you are now. I mean, it was a lot of just, hey, here's my best, can you beat it?
I disagree because I've read a lot of studies on that, about the difference between pitching now and pitching then. Not only did guys throw just as hard, but they hit locations just as well, and they could bend the ball just as well. I realize that people look at those old films that are played really at about 1.5 times regular speed because of the film that they were recorded on. And it looks like these guys are just kind of tossing the ball back and forth, but that's not the case. Guys were throwing in the mid-90s. Guys were throwing hooks. Guys were throwing sliders. They were hitting spots. They were striking guys out.
I will go ahead and bend that distance. I haven't seen the research on that, and that may be just I'm seeing some film. Also, you don't hear a lot of pitchers coming out of those areas. It's more about the big bats. But since we are talking about things, the steroid side of things and what could kind of be considered maybe a little bit, not as a taboo as it were, but it causes a bit of a stir. It kind of gets both sides of the aisle going. I figured, since you want to talk about it, why shouldn't we get every one of our listeners going and bring up the San Diego Padres choir scandal? Now, the Padres official and MLB officially completed their investigation today, and it was, to say it quickly, they said that it was basically that it was a product of human error. But I have the entire statement here, and I'm going to read it to you. And please don't blow the speakers out on any of our listeners' devices. Once you read this, or when I read it to you, I know you're going to have quite the opinion. Quote, "The San Diego Gay Men's Chorus has performed the Star-Spangled Banner multiple times before a Padres game. That Saturday's regrettable situation was a product of human error. That the situation was exacerbated by the fact that the lead entertainment supervisor was involved in a car accident on Friday night and thus was unable to work on Saturday and handle his typical responsibilities. That employees involved in the matter were handling new duties with which they were insufficiently familiar, and that the employees involved had no malicious intentions and, in fact, universally relayed contrition for how the incident unfolded and the adverse impression that it created," end quote. And one more thing before I let you go. The DJ who was fired, the third party that they said was responsible for this, DJ Art Romero, his goes by DJ Artform, was invited and, according to the Padres, has accepted their invitation to continue to provide services for the team in a role to be determined, and that is from Padres President and CEO Mike D. Chris, the floor is yours. I know you have a lot that you want to say on this coming from the West Coast.
All right. Well, I'll start with the fact that the Padres investigation, and I use that word very lightly, and their subsequent press release afterwards rings kind of hollow in my ears. I don't believe that it was human error, because when you play a recorded track and there are men on the ground waiting to sing, and that recorded track begins to play, it takes absolutely no time at all to stop it, apologize to the crowd, and then allow the people, the 100 men who are standing on the field looking like idiots, to go ahead and do what they were there for. And I'll go further than that. It sounds like, hey, this was just a mistake. Shouldn't have happened, but it did. Hey, we're sorry. Okay. And if that was the only issue, then I would have no problem with that statement. I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't be vocal about it. The fact is that for days prior to this game, the Gay Men's Choir was told several different times that they could sing, then they couldn't sing, and then they could sing. There was some anti-gay sentiment coming out of the locker room. There was a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and then suddenly the Padres said, hey, you can't sing unless you all buy tickets to the game. Whether you stay or not, the only way you're getting in to sing is if you buy tickets to the game.
And that was the one thing I heard that really bothered me. I